We are going to take you on a trip through Michigan, going up Lake Michigan to the Straits of Mackinac, make a short visit to Mackinac Island, go down Lake Huron, past Alpena, on down through here past Detroit, and so on into Lake Erie and up to Buffalo. We start at Buffalo with the Erie Canal, pass through the Erie Canal here, which winds and twists its way on down to the junction point near Albany, which is the Hudson River, down the Hudson River here, and so on into New York. The map that is not shown takes us on to, in the open sea, to Delaware Bay, to the Chesapeake Bay. And this is one of the Indians that came down through that great country there from Lake Michigan. I presume that you know who he is. And this is my brother, Newton Rich, the owner of this yacht. We went on a very large 63-foot yacht, and we're leaving Holland, Michigan. That's Mrs. W.A. Butler there waving goodbye to us early in the morning as we pulled out of Holland, Michigan on our way to Mackinac Island. Other yachts sitting there. You can see there's a little haze in the air. It's rather early in the morning, kind of a hazy morning. This is one of the things that you find out that you have to do on a yacht, and often, and that's scrub the decks. Doesn't make very much difference whether you're in fresh or salt water, except that in salt water you have to be continually taking the spray off with the salty spray, and you need a shower bath every time you come into port. In the fresh water, it's a little different. Notice the care with which he's cleaning this with his elbow. That's elbow grease, they call that. Here we are cleaning the rails. Not only spray, but of course at night there's a lot of dew settles on your boat. Little horseplay has to go along with it here. And this Mr. and Mrs. Frank Bush were a member of the party. We're now out in Lake Michigan, and that's one of the big freighters coming back of us there. We'll get a close-up of that shortly. Mr. and Mrs. Bush are from Chicago, and they've done a lot of yachting up in this area and also out in the ocean. Here comes one of the big lake freighters that most Michigan people have seen, traveling along here carrying all sorts of things from grain to coal, oil, and many other products. Now we're on our way to Mackinac Island, and I guess we better have a little coffee for breakfast. Bill Butler here is serving coffee, so they all go downstairs and have a cup of coffee, a little breakfast here. One nice thing about a yacht, you can have breakfast or coffee or lunch most any time you want it. Another thing about a yacht, you have to do your own washing. Here Bill is doing his washing, and I think it took him a few days to get his young son into the habit of handling some of his own washing. Very easy to rinse your washing when you're on a yacht like this, especially in fresh water. You just tie it on a rope and throw it out behind. Let the waves do the rest. The most modern washing machine you can imagine. Mr. Bush here became quite an expert on this particular job. We even let him do some of our work. Now this is Mackinac Island. Mackinac Island, as you know, is located in Michigan in the Straits of Mackinac. And it's a very beautiful spot up there. We spent the night there. There you see one of the big freighters going through the straits just off the island. A small passenger boat there is taking off for St. Ignace. Passenger boats ply between the island and both Mackinac City and St. Ignace. You can see the dock on the left there. That's where most of the yachts tie up. That's convenient Main Street. It's also fairly near some of the larger hotels. Old Fort Mackinac, you see here, is well known to those who have visited the island. Of course, this is one of the old English forts, or a replica thereof. Block house up on the hill overlooking the park. This is all park in here now, this picture was taken in the summer when the flowers are in bloom, early summer. Another view of that place, and this is Father Marquette's statue. He is supposed to come up through this country and have visited Mackinac Island numerous times and they've erected a statue to him there. And this is a view of the Grand Hotel. This is supposed to be one of the largest summer hotels in the world, if not the largest. We're down here in the park just below the hotel. This is the main drive going up to it. Of course, that's Stuart Woodfill waving his hand and taking off his hat. He is the president of the Grand Hotel organization. And of course, no automobiles are allowed on Mackinac Island. Therefore, horses are used to drive you around in these buggies. Rather fancy buggies, some of them. And you can visit any part of the island in one of those. Now, this is a picture overlooking the Straits of Mackinac from the Grand Hotel porch. They have what they call the longest porch in the world there. It's certainly a long one. Don't recall the exact length, but I think it's something over 1,000 feet long. Boat there going through the straits and some flowers planted in a box on the porch of the Grand Hotel. Beautiful country here in Michigan. In fact, it's beautiful all through the Great Lakes area. And many visitors come to Michigan to see such scenes as this. That's looking out of one of the windows of the hotel to the pool, a freshwater pool below where the water isn't quite as cold as it is out in the Straits of Mackinac. This is taken down alongside of the pool. A lot of people like to go up there and indulge in swimming. Here they are just sunning themselves in some of the fancy chairs owned by the hotel in the pool or park area down in front of the hotel. Now this is a little caddy house and restaurant out here on the golf course, the Grand Hotel golf course. That building way off to the left and up high is the governor's mansion. The governor of Michigan, whoever he may be, has the use of that governor's mansion anytime he desires it, and most governors spend the summer up there, conduct such business as they have from that location. This also overlooks the straits, practically this entire golf course, and you'll see some of the people taking off here. A group of press people were up here on vacation when this particular film was made. This is the Arched Rock. This is a well-known spot on Mackinac Island. Most everyone goes around to see the Arched Rock. Either they ride a bicycle around there or around with a horse and buggy. A couple of ladies looking down into the water from Arched Rock. And now we're headed down for the Blue Water Bridge at Port Huron. On our way down, we stopped also at Alpena, one of the way stations along the way, a place where you find a good stopping spot. There's an automobile coming across the Blue Water Bridge from Canada. This will give you a close-up of the bridge, give you an idea of what a tremendous project that is. Another view looking back at the Blue Water Bridge between Port Huron and Sarnia, Ontario. One of the larger factories there along the waterfront. Here's the owner of the boat coming up here to enjoy some of the sunshine. He and Mr. Butler there on the right. This film was originally made as a family picture, but after we got it done, some of the folks who saw it thought that we ought to submit it for public inspection, so therefore we put on a soundtrack so that others might have an opportunity to see it. This is Cleveland here. Down past Detroit, into Cleveland. We stopped along at several of these points, at Detroit, also at Cleveland, Erie, before going into the Erie Canal. Now here we're getting into the canal at Buffalo. A little fussy in some parts of the canal about your taking pictures, but they didn't seem to be too disappointed that I made that particular picture. This is a picture of the boat, which is a Burger, and as I mentioned, it's 63 feet long, has twin diesels. Now we're in part of the upper part of the canal here, and this trip took us 15 days. The Erie Canal is a very large and long canal and runs on from Buffalo over to the Hudson River and then down the Hudson River to New York. And in so doing, it passes through many cities. You notice here we're up above the fields. We're higher than the fields. Other places we're lower. Some places this canal follows a route where it has been dug. Other places it passes through lakes. And in some instances it follows one of the famous rivers that it follows is the Mohawk River. Some of you have heard about that. Of course, the so-called water level route that runs from the Great Lakes on down through to New York, in general, follows these water level routes here. But don't let that fool you into thinking that it's all water level, because you have to go through 35 locks, some of them up and some of them down. There are many of these huge barges found in the Erie Canal, and they carry all kinds of products. Everything from wheat to oil and scrap iron. Here we are going through one of the towns where there are many bridges across the canal. These are solid bridges. Most of the bridges along the canal will raise or lower, but these are all solid bridges here, or fixed bridges. Have to be built high enough so that you can get under. Sometimes you wonder if you're going to make it. That black-looking object up there ahead is one of the shut-off gates. A little closer to it now. They put these shut-off gates along the canal so that at various spaced intervals they could, if they wished, shut the water off and maybe drain the canal for repairs. Or if they have a bad wreck on the canal, sometimes they shut it off. And traffic may be stopped at various intervals. However, you can see the gate going down there. They will raise these gates as soon as a yacht comes along, blows a whistle, they raise the gates. Here's some cattle we saw along the canal coming down for a drink. Here a boat comes along and the waves start to hit the shore here. Why, they get up the bank in a hurry. Now we're down in one of the many locks. Some of these locks are as much as 39 feet in depth. And when you get down in there, you feel like you're in a regular cavern. However, I will say that the people who handle the locks attempt to give you good service in supplying you with throwing lines to you and supplying you with such aid as you need to get through. Here's a boat coming up here with a load of crushed stone. Kind of an old tug. Most of them are pushers on this canal. That happens to be one that's being pulled. But the Erie Canal carries millions and millions of dollars worth of products. Here's a late afternoon scene along the canal. As the sun was going down, we were beginning to think of a place to tie up for the night. It's generally quite easy if you make plans to get to a fairly large town where you can tie up at night and have reasonably good protection. One thing that you'll have to do a lot of is putting these ropes out, tying up to, you notice the boat carries bumpers there. You have to tie up to the alongside of many of these places to wait for another boat to come through the locks, or perhaps a huge scow like the one you see here. This scow that's coming out of here, I think, carried gasoline. As soon as that gets out of the way, well, we'll enter this lock and go on down to the different level. There, we're coming into the lock now. After you get in there, they require that you tie up. At first, you tie up to one of those huge iron rigs at the side, and then as you go down in the lock, there are various spots along the wall where you can take your line and tie to those. The bumpers help to keep you away, but they have to be set from time to time in order to be at the right angle. And it takes quite a bit of work on the part of at least a couple of people to shove the boat away from the wall as you go in there. Here's another barge coming in. Sometimes when you see these big barges, you wonder if there's going to be room enough for you to get by, but there generally is. Another thing that surprises you is that the men who run these boats seem to be able to put them in the locks, and in fact they seem to be built so that they just about fit these locks. When we get one of these big fellows in there, there isn't much room at either end. And you wonder how the captain of one of those boats can run it in there and do such a perfect job as they do. This is the Dauntless. I don't know what he was carrying. He may have been carrying gasoline. Every once in a while, one of these boats like the Dauntless will push the barge load up against a mud flat or something along the river, and sometimes it's quite a chore to take out a loaded boat. You notice that barge is hooked by cables to the back there, and it has a big bumper in front. And although being in what seems like an awkward position, they seem to get along pretty well. Well, now it's a question of washing the mop here. The mop is something that's very essential on a yacht, because day after day you'll find yourself doing some mopping. As you go along here, you run into some hills, some rather high hills. Farther down the Erie Canal, much of the country is very flat, but as you get pretty well along in the canal, well, you come to the hilly country. Notice the railroad track over there, the railroad on each side. Once in a while you see a train go by. In fact, quite often you see one go by. That'll give you an idea how much traffic there is between the east and the central part of the United States. Great amount of traffic goes over these lines. Here's one of the dams. They have a lot of places where they have dammed up the canal, and they use the power. There's a small powerhouse over there. With a 30 or 40 foot head, they can generate a considerable amount of power. Some places here, now you'll notice this is a long one here. I think there's 8 or 10 barges hooked onto this old fella, carrying junk. And a few passengers sitting back there. I suppose they're enjoying a free ride, I don't know, but here are some homes along the canal, various places. You find a lot of beautiful summer homes, especially when you get down along the Mohawk River. Now we're getting to a place where we drop very rapidly here. I think this is one of the deeper locks, as I recall it. We ran into several locks here that were 35, 40 feet, 35, I think 39 and a fraction feet the deepest, but close to 40. Looking down on the boat here as it came into a lock. The old mop is working. See him down there working away. Well, they're headed for another lock. Hope they're able to make it down through here. I guess they will. Sometimes in the larger locks, we were in the lock at the same time as other boats, but so many of the locks are rather small. Boat goes in here and the locks close. They're all ready to let us down. It doesn't take very long to go down. You go down kind of fast. Captain idles his motor. Here's the port of Albany. We're getting pretty well along here. Getting out pretty close to, won't be long now, we'll be in the Hudson River. It's a very large port. An awful lot of products go through here. Here we are again up above the level of the country around us. Seems kind of odd to be riding along in a boat and going through the hills. That's just what they've done. They've engineered this canal in such a way that you do travel through the hills in many places, and the fields are way down below you. Incidentally, this is one of the older canals in the country, and I think one of the oldest in use. New York State has a good many canals that have been built. And most of them are in use today because they carry a terrific amount of traffic coming up through the Atlantic Ocean. It's loaded on barges at New York and brought through these canals into the Great Lakes. Sort of a shortcut, you might say, from the Atlantic. It saves going way out around and shipping by train. This is another close-up. One of those big gate-type locks. You have to raise this thing up for us to get through. Now we're down in one of the deep ones. Just like being down in a cavern. There's a battleship. Saw this battleship as we entered the Hudson River. Ferry. The hills are growing higher. We are now nearing West Point Military Academy, which hangs here on the banks of the Hudson River. It is here that many thousands of our young men come to learn to become officers in the United States Army. Even our president, Dwight D. Eisenhower. So we go on down the Hudson River. Sunset along the Hudson. Many bridges along the Hudson River. Very large bridges. This is just one of the many we saw. On the big ocean freighters here. A little more rugged country. You can see the rocks here. Come right down to the water. Almost young mountains. Some places they bored a hole through the rock, let the trains come through. Rather than have to clear all that rock, you just cut a hole and a tunnel. Now, we had a lot of boats after the last World War, and you see some of them here. This is what they did with them. Many places, these boats are tied up around the country from the Gulf of Mexico to the Hudson River, and some in the west. They've used this vast bay here in the Hudson River to tie up the mothball fleet. Whether these boats will ever be used again or not is not known. I suppose eventually some of them may be used for scrap. But there are thousands and thousands of boats tied up around the world, still owned by Uncle Sam, and supposed to be in mothballs and available for use later on. This is one of the little towns as we're coming down towards New York. This is New York City at daylight in the morning. The sun is just starting to come up as we pulled out of New York. First part of our run out of New York, some of you may recognize some of these buildings, by the way, was out into the Atlantic Ocean. We made one run in the open ocean here before going into Delaware Bay, going around what they call Cape May in the Delaware Bay. There's another picture of a large ferry crossing, I presume, to the New Jersey side. The sailboat here was coming along behind us as we got out there, so we made a short picture of that. There's a bird came to visit us. Flying around here on the chair, and way out in the sea there. Some of the fishermen coming out. And eventually we came on up through Delaware Bay to another canal that leads to the Chesapeake Bay. And this is Chesapeake City here. Lots of boats tied up, plenty of fish. Somebody must have come in and dropped these fish on the dock. Here's some of the folks that were in the party. I'm on the left, Mr. Butler, Mr. Bush, and a brother of mine was the next one. This is Billy Butler on the left. My brother Fred on the extreme right, wearing a Mackinac Island hat. I have it on now. Hats are a good gag for a trip like this. You can have a lot of fun by wearing different kinds of hats. When you get over in that country, you're apt to see ocean freighters. Rather large ocean freighters here come up through Delaware Bay, and some of them cross over to Baltimore. Various other cities, Philadelphia, and various towns along the route. They were said to be loading explosives here. I was just as happy when we got past that one. This is one of the canals. This canal runs from Delaware Bay over to Chesapeake Bay. Here's some excursion boats coming out of Baltimore. You can see the crowd down there. I guess people still like to take advantage of an excursion when the weather's warm. This trip, by the way, was taken in September when the weather was warm. Here's another. This is a foreign boat here. Some of them pass pretty close. You can almost reach out and touch them. Our captain seemed to know what he was doing. Didn't scratch any of them. Notice these huge gates. In some places, these gates go about 75 feet in the air. There's a man out there tonging oysters. If you've never seen this done, they reach down there with these long tongs, get these oysters off the bottom of the bay here. Lots of oysters in this country. You see some on the back of the boat there. That's the way they do it. It's like two rakes put together. They pull it up with the oysters out. This is fishing here. These men are taking the small fish out, throwing them back. Still a lot of fish in this area, of course. Chesapeake Bay and Delaware Bay are both connected with the ocean. There's lots of fish. Quite deep. You can see those net stakes or tops of them sticking out, but they're down a long ways in the water. This is a brother of mine from New Jersey and his wife. They went along on the trip from New York City on. This Billy Butler, our photographer and cabin boy. Now this is Annapolis. You can see the Capitol there in the distance, and I think you get a distant view here of the Naval Academy. Of course, you know that the great Naval Academy is located here. We're tied up here to one of the docks. That's a picture of the boat there. Now that is a jellyfish, if you've never seen one. I suppose if that was down in Florida, they'd call it a man-of-war, but actually it's a different looking, it's a very soft creature, but those long things back, they pull across your arm when you're in swimming and give you some trouble. That's the Naval Academy there. Some of the towers at the Naval Academy. Give you an idea of the radio setup and the never-ending job of cleaning the boat still goes on. I'm getting towards the end of the trip here now. They're even shining up the windows. Everything will be in ship shape. This is my sister who met the boat. Mrs. Chesley. Three rich brothers here, and pretty soon you'll see their little sister. The hats we have on are some that they used at a celebration, and here's that same old Indian that started the trip. In just a moment, you'll see some others who have decided to join the same tribe. At least hat-wise. Many kinds of Indians. Those mink-tails got a tickle, you have to watch out for them. Frank Bush, our brother Newton, the owner of the boat. And this is the captain. He said no more fresh water for him. He's a saltwater man.